sneak around having sex and hoping the guards don't catch you, or sneak
Got it.
around helping your friends have sex, you know?
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Dankin, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming the King of Pot. With me, as always, is the King of Pot, Bruce Perlowin, my infamous cousin. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here.
Yes, I would agree. We got some fun prison stories to tell today, but before we start, I just want to say thanks for everybody who is watching, and please hit that like button and that subscribe, and please tell your friends to do that too. It helps our mission here at Becoming the King of Pot. And if you're looking for BTKOP merch, make sure you check out BecomingTKOP.com. That's BecomingTKOP.com. You can get a t-shirt or a hat or a stash bag or a mouse pad. Something with our really cool Becoming the King of Pot logo on it. So thanks in advance for doing that. So Bruce, we want to go back to prison a little bit and really delve into what it's like for, first of all, you making the transition from, kingpin to prisoner number 173567 or whatever your number was, right? And how you cope with that first transition, going from county jail to prison in Texarkana.
Okay, well, first of all, this is a classic story of making lemonade out of lemons or seeing the silver lining in every cloud. When you go to prison, and in my case, I was facing a 15-year sentence, and back then it was, we called it old law versus new law, which happened after 1983. You did 2/3 your time. Now you do 85% of your time. Bad deal on a 15-year sentence. 9 years is not the end of your life. But from day one, I actually saw this as an unprecedented opportunity of a lifetime to learn, grow, and study. I go, this is great. I can read to my heart's content. I can take college courses. I can get in great physical shape. Remember, I was an undefeated weightlifting champion growing up in the state of Florida and took third in the teenage nationals. And I was a captain of the gymnastics team, so I liked working out. I was very physical. So this was great. So good opportunity is how I saw it.
So it's almost like a vacation. You looked at it as you looked at it as the most optimistic way. Instead of, I can't believe I'm going to prison, you sort of embraced it.
I absolutely embraced it. I remember when I was in county jail, I would read a lot, and I never read on the streets. Maybe up until that point, maybe I read 5 books my whole friggin' life. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 at the most. And so I would read a book, in your bunk. You're in county jail. You can't do nothing. You work out, you do triceps and push-ups and stuff, but that was about it. So I read 1 book, then I would read 2 books at a time, then I read 3 books at a time, 4 books, 7 books, 10 books. And when I say 10 books at a time, you read 50 pages of this one, 50 pages of this one, 50 pages of that one. And it was great. I read up to 14 books at a time, and I was in
Did
heaven.
that help you? Let me ask you a question, right? So did that help pass the time, or did you just have this thirst for learning?
I had the thirst for learning. The time was relevant. Time sort of stops when you're there. But it was great. I mean, how many people go to prison think it's great, right? But it really was.
No, very few. That's what's so fascinating. Your phone's not ringing. You have nobody bugging you, right? And you could pretty much do what you want in the limitations of the prison, of course, right? But you just chose to, to learn and grow. But didn't you always want to go away for 10 years and study?
All my friends knew that. Growing up, I said, I'm going to go away for 10 years and go to a Himalaya cave and meditate, okay?
Right.
So this is the modern version of the Himalaya cave.
Right. So your Himalayan cave ended up being a prison cell.
Yes. Just like I projected in my mind. Now, in prison, you see TV. People's experience of prison mostly is what they see on TV. A lot of violence, a lot of sexual predatory activity going on. None of that happens in minimum, medium security prisons and or county jails for the most part.
Why?
County,
How does that not happen?
well, one, let's say minimum and medium security prison. You walk down the hall, bump into someone. Oh, excuse me. The last thing you want to do, like in Texarkana, in a medium security prison like that, is get in a fight because then they ship you to maximum security. Maximum security, you're in there with murderers, people that got life. They can't get any more time if they shank you and kill you. They've
Right.
already in there for murder. So you don't want that. You know, and then in county jail, you realize when you look at county jails, because you do a lot of transit, they take you to this jail to that jail on your way to where you're going, all right? On
Mhm.
your way to your prison or your way to your sentencing. And I was sentenced in San Francisco and Tampa. So I did a lot of traveling and stopping in county jails. And every time I stopped, I would say, God, these guys look scary. You know, now I'm in good physical condition at this point in my life. I, um, and then you go in there in the population, and they're just normal guys. Yeah, they do look scary at first. And then after a while, the 10th time you're walking into, your new guy walking in, they're just regular guys.
Yeah.
And there was only one time where we had an altercation. I almost had an altercation. I was in my cell, and some guy, buffed up guy, walks in and says, "You got any commissary money?" I go, "Yeah." "No, you have any money in your commissary?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I want some. I want some cigarettes," or whatever he said. And I'm thinking, and you learn this, you cannot be a prey. So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna hit this guy so friggin' hard." And got me a little bit worried because he was standing in front of me, and right here, there was a piece of metal that was sticking out of the wall where used to be a bunk, and somehow the bunk broke or something, and there's a metal. I go, "If I hit this guy with my strength and power and speed, his head's gonna go into that thing, I'm gonna kill him." I go, "But I have no choice." So, he's talking to me, giving me his rap, and I'm about to deck him, and luckily, another guy, white guy comes in. This guy was a black guy, and, he goes, you know, "Barrett, get out of here." So he goes, because he was another white smuggler. All right, and we recognize each other, okay? The white collar criminals, the smugglers. And so that was it. That was the only time there was a chance of getting in any kind of argument. All right. So that came and went. And they're just regular guys in there, and you're curious what are you in there for? And I had a big case,
Sure.
and you could
Yeah.
tell by the files that I carried around with me, and so they all respected me. Um,
I mean, did
and
they look at you as like, "Wow, there's that big marijuana kingpin"?
Yeah, yeah, I was the guy they all aspired to be, and I would play around. Sometimes I'd get into a cell, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't talk about my case, and I'd watch the behavior of everybody. I'm just another guy, no one's paying attention, and then I would leave a newspaper article about me on one of the tables, and that was it. Somebody would read, "Oh my god, this guy's here, this big smuggler," and says they wanna talk and everything and befriend me. So I was actually very popular. All the smugglers were, and my caliber smuggler.
Yeah, that's funny. So talk about for a second, since you brought it up, the media, right? Once you were arrested and you were bopping around from prison to prison and finally settling in Pleasanton, when did the media come calling?
Yeah, that was interesting. I would do what I would call a media blitz. And I had it as certain agendas. One agenda was to cut loose all the people that smuggled for me. So I would call the media and say, "You want to interview me?" And they go, "Yeah." you know. And I mean, I got hundreds, literally hundreds of articles,
Yeah,
and they'd come and interview me, and I'd tell them I took advantage of these poor, desperate fishermen, and you know, the Japanese were encroaching on our fishing grounds and causing them to go out of business, and the rising oil prices from the Middle East was, impacting their livelihood. So I made it
yeah.
look like they were suffering, and I took advantage of them by having them smuggle, and that really worked. And then a lot of things, you want to maybe do a movie one day or a TV series. So a lot of media stories worked. And, now getting your name in the media wears off after about a year. Oh, wow, look at this big article about me. Oh, here's a three-part series about me in the Ann Arbor, Michigan newspaper, or the
Right.
the one down in San Diego. So it wears off, but you can use it as a tool for publicity for a million different reasons. You know, so I
Yeah, for
took
sure.
advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And who in the press dubbed you the king of pot?
That was a 1978 article by, Joel Pimsleur from the Los Angeles Times. He came out with an article called "The King of Pot," and he talked all about my case. So I've
Mhm.
been the king of pot ever since 1978, so that's a lot of years. What, 53
Lot of
years now?
years, yes, with
Wait,
many
wait, wait, wait.
queens.
I take that back. I think it was 1987. I reversed the 7 or 8. It's
Ah, right, right, right. That
1987
makes
that
more sense.
article
Yeah, that makes more sense
came out.
because 'cause you're in prison at that point in 1987.
Right.
Yeah,
I
right.
so what a
Um,
great title to get in the
right,
ongoing.
while you're in prison, right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. Did you hold court?
Sort of. I held yoga classes.
Yeah.
I so
Well, talk
th
about that. So you were a yoga guru yourself, right? And, how'd you start, like, creating a group of yoga prison, you know, folks who
Alright,
wanted to do yoga?
so the first prison I went to after going through all these county jails and doing the thing with the articles and reading lots of books in county jail, I get to Texarkana. Now you're in regular population. You can go on the track and you can run to your heart's content. You can work out with the weights. You can do pull-ups, push-ups, squat, the whole weight pile. And they also had college courses. Well, what I did, I set up a thing called HT Striders, and I forgot what it stood for, health something. I forgot what the T stand for, and it was how to be healthy. You know, so I would write to publishers. I'd say, "We're in prison. Can you donate some books on vitamins, books on working out, all kinds of things that would help that had to do with health, whether it was nutrition or whether it was exercise." And they sent books. So I had a little library outside by the weight pile, and you could check a book out called HT Striders, and then I also taught Kundalini yoga. I had a lot of Kundalini yoga books. The yoga organizations in America sent a lot of books into prison, and it was all for free. So I started teaching Kundalini yoga and that was an all men's prison.
Uh-huh.
So and people liked it. It was rapid breathing. It was very physical, Kundalini yoga, as opposed to Hatha yoga, which is gentler yoga, but a lot of good, healthy stretching. And, so that was what I did, uh, and then I
Well, you would
stu
think that everyone would wanna participate just to get out of the cell, right? And do something, in a group setting.
it was highly just like everybody's working on the weight pile, a lot of people wanted to do yoga, and
Right.
so here's also this yoga instructor. Another thing I paid attention to was I forget how old I was, let's see, 19 87. So I was between 30 and 40. Those are the years I was in prison. And I'd say, "What kind of shape can you get into at my age? And what kind of shape can you get into at age 50 or 60?" So I would study guys that have been there for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in prison and, were sculptured, looked like they were, Mr. Universe or something. And I discovered that you could be at age 60 when you start working out and get in amazing, incredible shape after a 5-year period. You look like Hercules. You look like, Mr. Universe. So that was a big concern of mine. I'm 30, I'm 40. Can I still get in shape like I was in the teenage nationals and, in my early 20s? So guys out there, start working out. 60 to 70, you can work out starting at that age and get in great physical condition, whether it's running, weightlifting, yoga. Um, and that was a good revelation for me to know that, oh, I got plenty of time to get in an amazing condition.
Right. And what sort of workouts did you do?
Well, at Texarkana, I just worked out 3 times a week on the weight pile. and I was going after my records. I was an Olympic lifter when I was younger, so it was snatch, clean and jerk, and press. I But most people were doing Olympic lifting, not Olympic lifting, powerlifting, which was the clean and jerk, the press, and I forgot the third. Oh, the snatch. Yeah. So those are the lifts all above here. But the powerlifting was squats, bench press, and deadlift. All right. So you have 3 Olympic lifts, 3 power lifts. And I went after all of them. I wanted to break all my records, which
Yeah.
was tough to do, especially
And
with
break all your high school records.
high school and college, a little
Got it.
bit of collegiate and triple A, and AAU, which
Yeah.
after college for about a year. And I did that. I didn't have any well, I had my best bench, my best deadlift, and my best squat beat all my records. So you're working out 3 times a week. Then you want to add running to your routine. I'd run 3 or 4 miles 2 to 3 times a week. I wasn't big on running, but I wasn't not running. And then the other thing was just walking, you know,
Mhm.
and I would like to walk and read at the same time. So I'm accomplishing 2 things at once, 3 things if you're out in the
Shocking.
sun,
Right.
you know.
Shocking. Yeah, you're a bit of an overachiever, we're learning. So I guess, rather than filling 1 minute, or having 3 activities, you fill 1 minute with 3 activities. So now it's only really take right? You're squeezing a lot of things into one thing.
And I also
Almost
res
like you didn't have enough time, right? Like 9 years wasn't enough time, right?
and I actually used to say, because I would keep a track of what I did, when, like a time management study. And
Sure.
I would say, God, I wish I could get like 6 hours of sleep instead of 8 hours of sleep. I could never reduce my sleep load down below 8 hours. It
Right.
was horrible.
That's right.
I
Right.
wasted 2 hours sleeping. At least that's how I
Yeah.
looked at it. You know?
Yeah, so you make the transition over to Pleasanton, you're on your daily routine, you're doing your thing. Um, what do you miss most?
About when I'm in prison, what
Like
do I
when you're
miss
in
about
prison, you're living your life, you're a guru, you got your thing going on, you're sort of the man, right? Because you're teaching things, you're studying, you're learning, you're growing, you're doing all of these things for yourself, but what do you miss?
I guess sort of the freedom. You do miss your freedom. I But it's not like this yearning thing. I was in with a lot of when Pleasanton I got to Pleasanton, now there's 2/3 women, 1/3 men, one of the last co-ed prisons in America. The women missed a lot more than their children than the men did, because women, I guess, are closer to their kids that, they birth them, and,
Right.
I think that's part about human nature, and, I really didn't miss that much. Yeah, you miss your freedom, you miss rock and roll, you miss good food, you miss partying, you miss doing a lot of sex, drugs, whatever it is on the street that you like. However, you replace that with what do I have now that I can take advantage of? I can learn, grow, and study. I can get to the best shape of my life. I got 5 college degrees, which I never had a degree. I made all A's, National Dean's List, President's List. I read 100 books a year. That was another thing. I always tried to read more books than I could. I wish I
Right.
could read faster, but I couldn't. I learned a little bit of speed reading, but not much. And so I didn't miss that much. I was
And
enjoying taking advantage of what I had.
Right, and you didn't miss anything about, the smuggling life, the constant, adrenaline of setting up the next one, worrying about this one, making sure the crews are there, making sure the weed is there, making sure the money's there, and all of that machine that you were running for so many years, and then it just stops.
It's somewhat of a relief. I don't know if you remember, but I was in the process of retiring. And I
Mhm.
had 3 more loads on that we're gonna do, maybe a few more, but I was gonna make $100,000,000, retire, and live in Ukiah, this beautiful mansion that I had built up in Northern California, 90 miles north of San
Right.
Francisco is where Ukiah is. You've been there. And,
Yeah.
so that was my plan. So I was winding down when that happened. So this is just fast tracking winding down.
Right. Right. I see. But you didn't miss that rush that, you said in previous episodes, you're an adrenaline junkie, right? What do you do with all that need for adrenaline when you're in prison?
Sneak around having sex and hoping the guards don't catch you, or sneak
Got it.
around helping your friends have sex, you know,
Right.
we would do what we call it spotting, alright? Like, if 2 people are around the corner making out, not having sex, but just making out, you would spot, that's the name, and you'd look out for guards. So, it was exciting and meeting, there's an amazing group of people I met, both men and women. You've heard me say, my best friends are spies, assassins, terrorists, hijackers, jewel thieves, bank robbers, smugglers, and that's just the females.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, there's documentaries, books, TV shows on most of the, not most, but I'd say 20 to 30 people that I was in prison with. So it was an exciting time because of the adventure of discovery. That's another thing. Okay, adrenaline junkie, the excitement of adventure, the excitement of discovery, the excitement of discovering things in books, discovering things in college courses. That's what I replaced all the excitement in my life with,
Mhm.
that kind of a journey.
And didn't you want to, sometime during your term, I remember you wanting to, work in prison reform and, change how prisoners were treated.
Well, actually, my master's, yes, my master's thesis, or is it master? Yeah, the master's thesis was called Biosocial Approaches to the Rehabilitation of Offenders. And, they're not in it to rehabilitate. You got a
Right.
78% recidivism rate. I I could reverse that and make it a 78% success rate and my master's thesis covered that. There's, different areas that you can do to change the recidivism rate, but there's this whole
Like what? Like, give us a couple examples.
okay, the 5 things was, first of all, food sensitivities. If you're got sensitivities to certain food, it acts on your brain and makes you behave in a criminal manner or in a crazy reckless manner, or both. Um the other thing was hypoglycemia. A lot of people back then, they didn't know anything about hypoglycemia. Alright, so if you have low blood sugar, you're gonna do crazy ass shit. Alright, if you are food sensitivities and food allergies is another one. The other one is just general health, physical conditioning. If you're eating junk food and processed food, your body's not working right. Your mind is part of your body. Yoga was a big one. They've actually done studies on all this stuff. The transcendental meditation people did all these studies that if you meditated a certain amount of time each time, the recidivism rate went, bottomed out. So
Right.
and it's a holistic approach to, reducing recidivism, but do they want to? Not when you got prison industries making paying us 11 cents an hour I think that was the high end, maybe 26 cents an hour was the high end.
Right.
So, think about that, how much money is being made. What about the guy that supplies the food to the prisons? You think he wants to reduce the population of food? No. So like in the episode with Alan Silver, the lawyer that we had, he said how stupid the government is for the marijuana laws. Well, that stupidity of the marijuana laws, which anyone who looks at it realizes that's absolutely asinine, and stupid. The same thing with the prison uh, uh, environment. Stupid, ridiculous, asinine, makes absolutely no logical sense. Maybe it fulfills the vengeance part of society or the politicians, or maybe there's a big giant economic incentive. They call it the prison industrial, let's see, the pharmaceutical drug cartel,
Industrial
prison
complex,
industrial
yeah.
cartel, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that can be said for lots of industries, right? That cause havoc and don't really help, like the alcohol industry, right? There's a whole industry of getting people off of alcohol,
yeah,
right? Uh,
yeah.
so it just doesn't make any sense, right? And it's so hard to get cannabis legalized, and yet All of these other things are weird. Anyway, so you're living this prison life. You're not really missing anything. You're growing. You're reading. What are you enjoying most about that whole experience?
Probably the people. Remember, first of all, my roommate was Joe Chagra, who was a lawyer, so he was a wonderful human being, you know? Um, you had a key to your own room. You wore your own clothes. You went to the movies on Friday and Saturday nights. You had a great lunch. You got to work out. You got to go to school. I taught GED classes, um, to prisoners that needed to get their GED so they could go into college. You had these great professors that would come into school, from UC Berkeley and Cal State. Very high caliber professors would come in and teach you. We had dances once in a while, maybe every 3 months you have a dance, and I used to sit and say, "Nobody would ever believe this." Everybody's slow dancing, hugging each other in their own clothes, dancing, and, you have Children's Day, where the children would come into the prison and usually, like, around Halloweens, and so we'd have this whole Halloween set up for them. We did plays, we put on plays, so it was like a whole world. It was like going to college
Yeah.
campus in
Mm.
reality.
And did your kids ever come to visit you? And who did come to visit you over that stretch?
Let's see, Becky brought, Reese to come visit me, often, probably the most. Aubrey came and visited, but Becky, I think,
And what was
brought
that like? Well, to talk about what a visit was like.
well, nothing stands out dramatic, "Hi, I love you, I'm your dad," and they're glad to see
Yeah.
me. Just bonding, and it's not like the father's gone forever and you never see him again. You would go and visit him every few months. I think Kelly came and visited me. He's the honest smuggler.
The honest
Um,
smuggler, right, so
right.
right.
Who else? My mom came and visited me, I think once. Uh, Craig may have. I don't remember visiting. Visiting wasn't a highlight for me, because I was so
Interesting. Why do
into
you think it wasn't?
because I was in college. I was in
It was an
study.
interruption to your current life, right?
Yeah, and you really couldn't I mean, how much could you accomplish in a 3 to 4 hour visit? You know, not much. Although for the kids, it was good because the father figure was still there. Even though he was removed, he was still there. You
Yeah,
still had that connection.
right. And you, famously wrote letters to your kids, right, once a week with $1, right, or $5? What
No,
happened there?
it was the Monday and Tuesday letter. The Monday letter went to Aubrey, the Tuesday letter went to Reese, and I would number them so they'd would see the consistency. So you get up to, oh my God, look, it's the Monday letter number 278, or
Right,
it's the
right.
Tuesday letter number 350. My dad's been doing
Yeah,
this every single week. He's there. And then every month I would send child support $5. No, it's not a lot of money, but at 11 cents an hour, it's a lot of money, but they would at least get something and they'd know that their father is still thinking of them enough to
yeah.
write them letters and send them a little bit of money.
Those should be a book. Letters from prison.
The Monday letters were awesome. Unfortunately, I have a couple of them left, but Aubrey lost his in the big giant hurricane down in
Mm.
Homestead that destroyed,
Andrew?
yeah,
Yeah,
Andrew. And Reese just lost his over the years, moving. So
yeah.
I do have some in this office, which I'm unpacking and
Right.
getting everything and they should be. And, like Billy Hayes just published his book, Letters from Prison, and they're fascinating, you
Yeah,
know.
I bet.
And mine would be fascinating too because it's the mindset of a younger Bruce Perlowin
Sure.
talking to his kid. We have probably 4 or 5 of them that we've preserved.
And as you're living this lifestyle in prison, are you thinking, "I'm gonna get out of here anytime now," or are you looking at that 9-year mark and just marking days off with an X? You know what I mean?
Um No, in the beginning, you always think you can get your sentence cut to a Rule 35, which is a resentencing based on this and this and this. So a lot of people
Yeah,
get a reduced sentence from the Rule 35. There was nowhere to go with me. You know, I would just get good time. So they would take
I
that
see.
6 years off the 15 years for good time and just doing two-thirds your time. So, no, you're sort of marking it. I remember one time I had 500 books behind the bunk beds that Joe and were in our dorm, and, I smuggled in the wood from Unicorn and made shelves. I had literally 500 of them there, and I go, "Oh my god, I can only read 100 books a year. I got only, like, 2 years left. I can only read 200 of these, so I gotta get rid of 300 books." So, it was a little disappointing I couldn't read all the books that I wanted to read. Um, so you're marking the time down, and, interesting, you say, "Are you gonna go back to smuggling?" When I got out, I figured, "Well, you know what? I'll go back to smuggling, but I'm gonna smuggle from Thailand to Canada and not break any US laws." And so I
Mm.
tied up with a guy from Canada in prison in Pleasanton, and when I got out, one of the first things I did, even though I was sort of reformed, um, went up to Canada. He smuggled me
Sort
across
of
the border.
reformed? Right, right.
And I'm hiding in the bushes, he with him, he's with me, and his buddies come across, we go through all these bushes and he had a knapsack on with a bunch of pot in it. And so that we waiting, the car comes up, we both jump out of the bushes, jump in the guy's car, now we're in Canada, and we take off. And I stayed up there for maybe 3 weeks, and I went in a boat, and I started looking for offload spots, either landing strips, but mostly boat offload spots. And, uh and then I realized then I started doing network marketing with Jerry Rubin as my job. You had to have a job, and I couldn't do both. I couldn't work a job and do a smuggle, and I didn't have the infrastructure that I used to have before. I didn't have a sales force, although selling pot is not that hard, but, a sales force that you grew up with and trusted. I
Sure.
didn't have, the boats, the docks, the backup bots, the electronic equipment,
Yeah,
all
you gotta
those.
start from 0. Yeah, you gotta start from 0.
And you could do both because when I was smuggling, that's all we did. Yeah, I
Yeah.
ran a houseboat company, I laundered money. That was the background. We were like Craig said, the dock master, he says, "I went to bed as a criminal, and I woke up the next day as a criminal." And that's what we were. We were marijuana smugglers, and that was our full-time job. And I couldn't do a network marketing full-time job and a smuggling, so I gave up the smuggling because I just didn't have the resources to do that.
And with that, we will call an end to today's fascinating journey through becoming the king of pot. More prison stories to come and more smuggling stories in future episodes. And also lots of special guests we have coming your way soon. Anything else you want to add, Bruce?
Yeah, the special guests are gonna be very colorful, very famous. Two groups of guests. One who was in prison with me, all right? That's a whole series of people, and then other smugglers from the golden era of marijuana smuggling, what I call the founding fathers of marijuana smuggling. Most of them have written not a most, but a lot of them have written their books, a lot of them are podcasts, and we all want them here in our thing. So it's not just me telling the story of that historical epic. We're covering 1960 to 1990, which is the golden era of marijuana smuggling. And they also call that what we're doing here, nostalgia crime. Why nostalgia crime? You can Google it. Uh, because that was before the cartels, before the violence, and people have the nostalgia for the hippie mafia or the gentleman smugglers, the old guard that didn't use violence, that were just creative, inventive, unique people. And there's a lot of us, and I want to tell the stories and have all of them on to cover the nostalgic smuggling era of
Y-
they call it nostalgic crime,
Right.
nonviolent, before cartels.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to do here at Becoming the King of Pot. His name is Bruce Perlowin. He is the King of Pot. My name's Todd Dankin, and I'm his cousin. And we'll see you next time.